Serious, what is a fucked up secret you know about someone? Have a friend who had an affair with her older, married boss and got pregnant. Didn't realize it until she was too far along to get an abortion. Boss tried to get her to agree to get an illegal abortion. Basically he knew a guy. Said guy was not an actual doctor working out of an actual clinic, which she flat out refused. Boss then ended up pressuring her to give a baby up for adoption. I'll fire you and ruin your life if you don't. I'll have you thrown out of your apartment, and other threats were made. This guy was a big name in our town and she took the threats seriously, and she eventually agreed. He's been sending her money every month since to keep her quiet about it. I know a woman who was dating a child-free man. He was adamant about not ever having children, while she was crazy about the opposite. She punctured condoms, stopped birth control, while pretending she never stopped, and lied about her period dates. Poor guy thought her birth control and the condoms he was using would keep him safe, but she got pregnant anyway. He doesn't know. He's miserable. One of my friends had a roommate in college who was a total douche. For some reason he decided to jack off into the roommate's shampoo bottle. Every time the roommate was being a jerk, he'd shoot a load into the guy's shampoo. This continued for the entire year. The roommate never found out. For a while my friend had a Pavlovian effect, where he'd pop a boner when he got mad. My girlfriend's sister confided in me that her father used to molest her when they were little. She said she saved my girlfriend from it because she was old enough to know what was going on. My girlfriend doesn't know, and her dad visited recently and took us all out to dinner. Super uncomfortable. Small backstory. My dad's side of the family is huge. I have 9 aunts and 4 uncles from his side. Some of his siblings are half siblings, and dozens of cousins. Anyway, one of my aunts is the only one who really has her life together. She is married and has 5 kids, but one of them isn't her husband's. I overheard her and my mom when I was 6 and my aunt was crying about something, and all I heard was, "Tasted funny and don't remember," and my mom telling her to take a shower and we'll deal with it after. I just kinda brushed it off and later asks my mom. She told me that my aunt was very sad and that was it. I don't know it got brought up, but when I was 12 my mom told me the full story. My aunt had invited over her husband's best friend and his girlfriend, since she was a bit lonely with her husband, gone on a trip for work. Only his best friend came over, and they started drinking some sodas. I don't think any alcohol was involved. He offered to get her another soda, and after that she felt tired and fell asleep soon after. The next morning she woke up and her shirt was inside out and she felt gross. There was also a note on her nightstand that said, "I owe you." The sick shit raped my aunt. She called my mom, since they were best friends at the time and they never told anyone except me. That secret could tear up my entire dad's side in a second. Mostly because everyone is super close and the blame would be passed around that someone should have noticed. We have a former coworker. He kind of looks like a garden gnome and has a belligerent attitude. He got a notice of termination and joined LinkedIn. The background on the photo looked familiar, but we couldn't figure out where it was from. Then we put 2 and number 2 together. He was sitting on the shitter at work. If you look carefully you could even see the edge of the stool hinge. I know that my grandpa had a second family that nobody else in my family knows about. My grandma on my dad's side of the family died when I was still very young, but my grandpa lived until I was in my early 20s, and we were pretty close. At one point, when I was about 13 or 14, he got very sick, and we all thought it was the end. I was sitting and talking to him one day. He was in bed, and he fell asleep. He was on a lot of medication including painkillers, so this wasn't a shock. A few minutes later he woke, but was disoriented and talking to me like I was someone else. He was apologizing to me about not being there, which made no sense. I put together the pieces and suspected he was talking about, or thought he was talking to, someone he had had an affair with. So he pulls through that illness, and a few years later he and I went on a weekend fishing trip. On that trip I asked him about what he was saying and what I suspected he was talking about. He confessed to me that in the late 1950s he and my grandma were going through a rough patch. He met this other woman and saw her off and on for about a year, then she ended up getting pregnant. He would go see her when possible and gave her money to support the kid. My grandma, dad and aunt, my dad's sister, never knew about this, and he asked me to keep this between us. Over the course of the weekend he explained how his life was basically a hell of his own creating, because he was lying to 2 different women, and trying to basically juggle 2 different families. He told me to never do what he had done. I never told anyone. Then a handful of years later he died. The lawyer contacted me about his will, and said there was a special clause in the will just for me. Basically I got control of his safe deposit box, but the lawyer was supposed to not tell anyone else about the box. It was private and just for me. In the regular will, the grandkids, there were 4 of us in all, got $5,000 each. In the safe deposit box was a letter he wrote me telling me how he appreciated me keeping his confidence, and how he was proud of the man I had grown to become. There was also $25,000 in cash. I wasn't sure what to do with it. At first I was excited, but then it felt like I was being paid for my silence, and it made me kind of ill. After much deliberation I gave the money to a group that helps abused and runaway kids. One of my relatives was a musician with a very successful band. Then he dropped dead. The family put out word that he died of a heart attack, and that story stuck. To this day his fans, even his fellow band members, think that's how he died. In reality, he dropped dead of a heroin overdose. Was shooting himself up in the bathroom when he odd. My girlfriend's mom seduced my girlfriend's sister's boyfriend, who was also hitting on my girlfriend at the time. Her mom sent nudes to the boy as well as wrote smut about him and my girlfriend. Confusing, right? In other words, mom sends nudes to daughter's boyfriend, writes smut between boyfriend and other daughter. My grandmother married a divorcee. He developed Alzheimer's and is now under nursing home care. She has since rewritten his will to financially exclude the daughters he had in his previous marriage and take all the money for herself. I know this because I overheard her talking with my aunt. She did not know I was in the house. I loathe her for doing it. It degrades her wholesome, grandmotherly status and transforms her into an extremely immoral character in my life. But understand, I can't say anything, or the entire family would spiral into more chaos than it's already in. A friend I grew up with and recently reconnected with had sex with his wife's sister. He got her pregnant. She had the baby and the wife doesn't know the niece she's babysitting daily is her husband's child. Hope this doesn't get buried. One of the most fucked up things I ever heard. So my C's got married when she was 15 to a douchebag who just turned 18. Long story short, despite trying to make it on their own they failed and had to come back home to stay with my parents. I go to uni, but come home for summers. So one night we invite over a cousin, Kaylee. She and my C's are the same age and grew up together. They're really close. We plan to camp out in the backyard, s'mores and scary stories and whatnot. It gets too cold for the my C's, her hubby, and Kaylee. But I'm not a pussy, so I stay outside and sleep in the tent with the dogs. The 3 of them go inside to sleep in my C's room on her big bed. When C's wakes up, she sees her new hubby fucking her cousin. Asks what's going on and Kaylee says she wanted to lose her V card to a hot guy. BTW. My C's now ex-husband was like a middle of bumfuck Michigan 4. My C's demands they stop, is super upset. Husband tells her to shut up cause her window is open, and I might hear. She lays there and cries while he fucks her cousin. Then he asks to have sex with my C's. She says no, but he blames her for never putting out and forcing him to go to other girls. Kaylee backs him up, says my C's is a bad wife. So she lets him have sex with her. Next morning, I'm none the wiser. My C's didn't tell me until a year later when that fucking rotting shitcake dick weasel of an excuse for humanity has already moved away and they're divorced. Otherwise, I'd kick his ass into a dimension of endless clotted jizz and ass rape for the next century. My C's holds it together real well. Even still talks to Kaylee. It all just got brushed under the rug like so many of our family's secrets. Alt account for obvious reasons. Me and the wife are getting divorced due to her cheating on me. We have a daughter that is 2 years old. The no paramour clause is in effect. What that means is that if she is seeing someone, that person cannot stay there while my daughter is there. I'm not sure if it continues to. That guy can't even be around her at all. We know from her own family that she royally pissed off that the guy she is with is living there with her. That means when my daughter goes to spend the night with my soon-to-be ex-wife, that boy is there. We've just recently hired a pie and are hoping to hear back soon. Fact of the matter is, she is looking at contempt of court charges, which could be a year in jail, loss of visitation, or a $1,500 to $2,000 fine as well as loss of visitation. Your move, you manipulative bitch. In 8th grade, one of my friends was out sick with mono for a few weeks. She came back for a day. Then she left again for a few days. She told everyone she was just having more trouble with mono. But in reality she had tried to kill herself because she was so behind in school and her parents were trying to divorce, but they couldn't afford one. Freshman year I was hanging out with a new group of people that I didn't know super well, mostly because of this one girl in the group who I got along well with. Anyway, we were talking about banging and she was telling us about this guy she hooked up with at a party a few days ago. Fast forward like a week later, and we go to a party, and we are coming back in the car. Everyone is wasted, and talking super loud on top of the music, and I'm talking to her, and she said she was lesbian, and I said what about that guy you hooked up with last week, and she said oh he raped me. I didn't want to tell anyone. We were both pretty drunk, and I'm not sure if she was serious, or she thought I wasn't listening, but either way I had no idea what to say at the time. I had only known her for a few weeks really, and I had never dealt with this before. I never brought it up afterwards. She was definitely troubled, but most of it came from childhood/parents before she got to college. But to be honest, I have no idea if she is even aware that she told me that.